The political theater of international trade has rarely seen a production as charged as the current standoff between Canada and the United States, where electric vehicles, specifically those bearing the Tesla insignia, have become the unlikely protagonists in a high-stakes drama. At the heart of this conflict lies a proposal by Chrystia Freeland, Canada's former finance minister and a leading contender for the Liberal Party leadership, to impose a 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles imported from the United States. This retaliatory measure, framed as a response to the Trump administration's threat of sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods, is more than a mere economic maneuver. It is a calculated political strike aimed at the nexus of corporate power and right-wing populism, embodied by Tesla CEO Elon Musk's unabashed alliance with Donald Trump. The implications of this move ripple far beyond the automotive sector, touching on themes of economic sovereignty, environmental policy, and the precarious balance of North American trade relations. Freeland's proposition is rooted in a blend of strategic targeting and ideological defiance. By focusing on Tesla, a company synonymous with both innovation and Musk's polarizing persona, Canada is sending a clear message. The era of passive acquiescence to U.S. economic dominance is over. The proposed tariff is not merely a reaction to Trump's protectionist threats, but a deliberate attempt to weaponize trade policy against the political machinery propping up the former president. Musk, who has funneled $277 million into Trump's campaign and emerged as a key ally, represents the intersection of corporate capital and reactionary politics. For Freeland, a figure positioning herself as a progressive bulwark against Trumpian chaos, this is an opportunity to redefine Canada's economic strategy as one that refuses to kowtow to oligarchic interests. The symbolism is potent, a progressive-led Canada striking at the heart of Trump's donor base while framing the fight as a defense of multilateralism and fair trade. The economic calculus, however, is fraught with complexity. Tesla commands a formidable 17% share of Canada's burgeoning electric vehicle market, a sector that has outpaced the U.S. in adoption rates, with nearly 1 in 5 new cars sold being fully electric. The Model Y and Model 3 dominate sales charts, their success buoyed by provincial incentives like Quebec's $4,000 rebate and a now-expired federal program offering up to $5,000. A 100% tariff would effectively double the price of these vehicles overnight, placing them out of reach for most Canadian consumers. The immediate consequence would likely be a seismic shift in market dynamics, with domestic automakers like Ford and GM poised to capitalize on Tesla's sudden absence. Yet this silver lining is tempered by the broader supply chain ramifications. Tesla's operations are deeply enmeshed in North American manufacturing networks, particularly in battery production and software integration. Disrupting this ecosystem could stall the momentum of Canada's green transition, undermining federal ambitions to phase out internal combustion engines by 2035. For Tesla, the stakes are existential. The company's CFO, Vaibhav Taneja, has already warned investors that tariffs would have an impact on our business and profitability, a rare admission of vulnerability from a firm accustomed to bullish forecasts. Tesla's reliance on global supply chains, particularly Chinese graphite for batteries and components sourced from Mexico, leaves it acutely exposed to the crossfire of trade wars. The proposed Canadian tariffs compound existing pressures from Trump's 25% levy on Chinese imports and his threats to revoke the $7,500 EV tax credit, a policy that has disproportionately benefited Tesla. Musk's political gambit, betting on Trump's return to power, now risks backfiring spectacularly as progressive governments abroad target Tesla as a proxy for U.S. aggression. The irony is palpable. A company built on the promise of a sustainable future finds itself collateral damage in a conflict fueled by regressive nationalism. The human cost of this economic brinksmanship cannot be overstated. Auto workers on both sides of the border face an uncertain future, with the potential for plant closures and layoffs looming large. Canada's automotive sector, which employs over 125,000 workers, is particularly vulnerable to retaliatory measures targeting industries like steel and aluminum. The 2008 financial crisis demonstrated how intertwined these economies are. When U.S. auto demand collapsed, Ontario's manufacturing heartland hemorrhaged jobs. A full-blown trade war could eclipse that damage, with the Bank of Canada warning that sustained 25% tariffs would trigger a recession, shrinking GDP by up to 3%. For workers in communities already battered by globalization and automation, this is a nightmare scenario, one where geopolitical posturing trumps livelihoods. Yet Freeland's play is not without its progressive bona fides. By targeting luxury goods like U.S. alcohol and high-end EVs, the tariffs are designed to minimize pain for ordinary Canadians while maximizing discomfort for Trump's elite backers. This surgical approach contrasts sharply with the blunt instrument of Trump's across-the-board tariffs, which would inflate prices for everyday essentials from groceries to gasoline. The distinction is ideological. Where Trump's protectionism serves corporate titans and fossil fuel interests, Freeland's aims to reclaim policy space for climate action and equitable growth. By coupling the Tesla tariff with investments in domestic EV infrastructure and manufacturing, Canada could theoretically nurture a homegrown green economy less beholden to U.S. whims. But this vision hinges on flawless execution, a precarious assumption given the volatile landscape of global trade. The environmental paradox at the core of this conflict is equally thorny. Electric vehicles are central to decarbonizing transportation, yet the tariff threatens to slow their adoption by making the most popular models unaffordable. Canada's 2035 zero-emissions vehicle mandate, already jeopardized by the cancellation of federal rebates, would face further headwinds if consumers revert to gas-powered cars. This dilemma underscores the fragility of market-driven climate solutions. When geopolitical tensions flare, environmental priorities often become expendable. The irony is that Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory, which supplies Chinese-made Model 3s to Canada, already faces a separate 100% tariff enacted in 2024 to align with US and EU policies against Chinese overcapacity. In effect, Canada is now compounding barriers to EV access from multiple fronts, undermining its own emissions targets in the name of economic retaliation. On the US side, the political ramifications are equally combustible. Musk's alignment with Trump has alienated a significant segment of Tesla's customer base, the environmentally conscious, socially liberal urbanites who form its core market. The prospect of Tesla becoming a pawn in a trade war may accelerate this erosion of brand loyalty, particularly if competitors like Rivian or BYD capitalize on the chaos to gain market share. For Trump, the tariffs represent a double-edged sword. While they gratify his base's protectionist instincts, they also risk destabilizing a key donor's business empire. The dissonance is glaring. A president who bills himself as a champion of American manufacturing is inviting policies that could cripple the nation's most iconic EV maker. This contradiction lays bare the transactional nature of Trump's alliances, where corporate fealty is rewarded until it conflicts with political theatrics. Historically, U.S.-Canada trade disputes have been resolved through the quiet diplomacy of technocrats and the mutual recognition of shared interests. But the current climate, poisoned by Trump's nihilistic populism and Canada's progressive recalibration, offers little room for compromise. Freeland's tariff proposal is a declaration that Canada will no longer play by the old rules of neoliberal globalization, rules that have often left it subordinate to U.S. economic might. By weaponizing trade policy against specific corporate actors, she is channeling a broader left-wing critique of unfettered capitalism, one that views multinational corporations as complicit in eroding labor rights and democratic governance. This approach resonates with a global trend of progressive governments reasserting state control over strategic industries, from Chile's lithium nationalization to the EU's antitrust crusades against big tech. Yet the risks of escalation are omnipresent. Trump's executive order, signed on the eve of the tariffs' implementation, includes a retaliation clause allowing further measures if Canada responds in kind. A tit-for-tat spiral could ensnare sectors far beyond automotive, from Canada's oil exports, which face a 10% U.S. tariff, to dairy and agriculture. The 1990s softwood lumber wars, which dragged on for decades and cost billions in litigation, offer a cautionary tale of how bilateral disputes can ossify into permanent fixtures of the trade landscape. In an era of climate crisis and economic instability, such protracted conflicts are a luxury neither nation can afford. For the Canadian left, Freeland's gambit is a litmus test of progressive governance. Can trade policy be harnessed as a tool of social and environmental justice, or will it inevitably succumb to the same corporate capture it seeks to combat? The answer may hinge on whether the tariffs catalyze a broader reimagining of Canada's economic priorities. Investments in public transit, renewable energy, and union-led EV manufacturing could offset the short-term pain of higher vehicle prices, positioning Canada as a leader in just transition policies. Conversely, if the tariffs are perceived as hollow symbolism, a progressive veneer on neoliberal orthodoxy, they could deepen public cynicism and fuel the very populist currents they aim to counter. As the February 1st deadline recedes into the rearview, what emerges is a portrait of two nations at a crossroads. The United States, torn between its democratic ideals and authoritarian temptations, clings to a waning hegemony through brute economic force. Canada, navigating the contradictions of progressive ambition in a neoliberal world, seeks to redefine solidarity in an age of fragmentation. The Tesla tariffs in this light are more than a trade policy. They are a metaphor for the struggle to reconcile economic sovereignty with ecological survival, corporate power with democratic accountability. The road ahead is uncertain, but one truth is undeniable. In the theater of global trade, there are no spectators, only actors. The choices made today will echo through generations, shaping not just economies, but the very habitability of our planet.